Yo, what's going on? Episode 3, Savage and Humble podcast. I am Lord Savage, aka Anthony Gaines, aka the Savage One. I was born of this.
And I am Humble, SMEWG, some dog. Many of you know me as the dog.
Man, some Murray. We got a pretty interesting episode today. We're going to talk about a few things, and I'm just going to get this out the way right now. I got a crank in my neck, man. And so, it's going to be real stiff up in here.
You're going to be moving like me.
Man. All right. I got ice on my foot. Yeah, but the show must go on.
Right.
And I mean, I think some people might get in their feelings halfway through the show because we're going to be talking about religion.
Oof. Tough stuff.
So, you know how y'all feel about that stuff. But I think the first segment's going to be pretty interesting too. But I think we got to start off with the passing of an icon, Tina Turner. The first thing that comes to mind for me is I can't envision her being old.
Right. She was forever the same age. Looked like she was about 30 years old.
Huge icon. Obviously, she started off with Ike Turner, who was massively abusive. She broke away from that and became one of the hugest stars in the 80s.
Yeah.
And music is always going to be important. It's almost like a time machine. You can smell something and it takes you back to when you're younger, but you can hear a song and it can also take you back. So every time I hear a song with hers, it takes me back to Mad Max and the Thunderdome. I was not even a teenager. That was, I think, the early mid-'80s, late 80s.
Mid-late 80s, yeah.
So yeah, it definitely takes me back. But I mean, she was 80-something?
83, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, she was an icon. What makes me think about her is every time I think about her hair was iconic,
Right.
The style, the movement. And when Angela Bassett played her, she did a great job.
Great job. Actually, Tina Turner had a quote where she said that she didn't try to mimic her. She just pulled the best version of Tina out of her.
Interesting quote.
Yeah. So, and she definitely bodied that role.
Yes.
So, salute to her. Kudos to your family. Condolences
to your family.
We lost a great one.
Yes, we did.
So hopefully her energy is gonna pass through the universe for eternity, man.
Yeah.
I guess we can get to these NBA playoffs, man.
Man, what about those Celtics? Ooh, doggy.
Hey, I thought they were cooked, man. I thought Jimmy Butler iced them at the free throw line. And they had the person who I wanted to shoot the three, Marcus Smart. That's, if I'm the coach, that's who I'd live with, besides, I think Robert Walker, their other big dude. But as long as Brown or Jason Tatum wasn't shooting the shot, you figure you'd get a win, man.
Right.
But
man, that last fraction of a second.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, put back by White.
Yeah, man, hairline special. It was yeah. I was shocked, but you know what? Hey, you make the plays, you win the game.
Make the plays, man. Gotta make plays. We always talk about that. Gotta make plays.
So kudos to them, man. They're digging deep for this, man. I mean, they was down 3-0. Now they just won 2 in a row.
Yeah, man. I just hope.
No. 3 in a row.
Yeah, 3 in a row. They were down 0-3.
And now it's tied up. They're about to go to game 7.
And I hope they win it, man. I want that one team to make it to the NBA Finals that was down 0-3, because there's never been a team in history.
Yeah.
I bet you there's money on this game, man.
Oh
Holy
man, yeah,
crap.
I'm staying away from that.
Woo.
I think, well, I think the Celtics are the better team. They have the two better players.
Right.
Um, I think Jimmy Butler is exceeding his ceiling.
Right.
Um,
I have an interesting question about that. Um, I'm wondering, is he exceeding his ceiling, or is he more like a Kawhi Leonard, where he saves all of his good stuff
for the
for
playoffs.
the playoffs, or he's mimicking a Kawhi Leonard style? They stay in the top 4 or 5 in the league during the regular season, and then they go to the playoffs and they really turn it up. I don't know. I mean,
Well, maybe, I mean, maybe he just got that playoff dog.
man, he knows when it's more important, so he puts more effort in.
So yeah, we're gonna see what happens. This is gonna be a real interesting. That's tomorrow, ain't it?
Yes, it is.
So that's gonna be a real interesting game 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm pretty excited, man. Um, man, I think we gotta just jump into this, man.
All right.
This
Well,
is this is a rough subject.
yes, it is. It is very rough because the more I dive deep into racism and caste, the more I see the more hurt and the more pain I feel. Because you grow up, and for example, you see somebody punch somebody in the face, you automatically blame the person that's punching the person in the face for the crime of punching the person in the face. You don't know nuance. Maybe that person murdered that other person's mother or father, or caused them some kind of pain,
Or hit them first.
or hit them first. So you don't see the full picture of the nuance. And as I see the nuance in racism and segregation, it brings up just so much more pain because there was so much going on. We were being attacked on all 3 fronts when it comes to segregation. Um, the federal level, the state level, local level, and the private industry. In order to get housing, we were getting chopped off on all 3 levels. And I'm going to go over all of those levels and break everything down to you, period by period.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So we start off with our talk with the Reconstruction area. That's between 1877 and 1965. Okay. And when segregation started, what they did is they started out by, on their own, just building segregated areas. So they build 2 separate areas with segregated housing, one for black, one for white. And they built all of the white areas with amenities like swimming pools, golf courses, tennis courts, basketball courts, and the whole nine. And all of the black areas with none of those things. Um, then they slowly but surely um, made that into law. So how they did that is the Supreme Court in 1917 at first rejected all the segregation laws that the conservatives are trying to put forth. But they kept trying and kept trying. And eventually they broke through. And the federal government started the FHA. The FHA, the Federal Housing Authority, started out as a racist, segregated arm, wing of the federal government.
Damn, say that again.
A racist arm of the federal government. Okay.
That doesn't sound good.
And it was a lot of different agencies that followed up on that. I mean that worked with him. I mean Prudential. I mean all of the insurance agencies back in the days, all of the housing agencies. Everybody worked with each other to create deeds and zoning practices to keep us out of housing and create situations where our housing was not only segregated, but it was just patently worse. Um, and how they did that was they granted loans and insurance for those properties to white people only. The FHA wouldn't back your loan or provide you with insurance unless you were white. 85% of, well, 90%, my fault, of all blacks never knew what FHA loan it was, let alone had a FHA loan. Um, and unfortunately, over time, it just got worse and worse because, of course, black people were fighting against this legislation throughout the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, but they just kept adopting new language, changing the language of the deeds, changing the language of the zoning practices in order to keep up the level of racism and segregation that they started with. And so it never ended until now. It's still going on now. There's just no name for there's individual practices by individual companies that practice the same thing that the companies in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So let's get into the weeds of how this went about.
Yeah, let's.
So, a couple of different key rulings in the 1920s was trying to stop illegal segregation. And so, what they did is to get around those practices is, like I told you before, they changed the language. Instead of saying, um, we don't give loans and insurance to black people, we don't give loans and insurance to troubled areas or um, um, poor areas, or and they started. There's studies after study that counters all of this activity. Okay, so there are studies that say that not policies, integrated um, land and integrated neighborhoods increased the value of your home, not decreased. There's a number of studies in 1952, 1947, and 1926. All three studies state the same effect and the same result is that if you have an integrated neighborhood, then it actually increases the value of your home. You know why that's the case? Because the black families in the neighborhood paid unreasonably high mortgages. So of course,
It has to describe everything else.
So by them fucking over us or messing over us, they actually went against what they were trying to do, which was decrease the property value so they can. Yeah, it's a huge situation that countered all of their reasoning for doing that. But the biggest thing they did was called let me see here, blacklisting, not blacklisting. It was called
that shit's crazy.
yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. Just a second.
Oh, yeah, let's give this guy a shout out.
Yeah.
Color of Law, Richard Rothstein.
Right.
Oh, okay, my neck's feeling a little better. So this is where we get a lot of this information from.
Yeah. So. Yes. So how they controlled all these things was a technique called block busting. Okay. And how this technique worked is when they finally they finally gave up on trying to beat the courts when it comes to defeating segregation. They started employing techniques. Okay. So this technique in stage one recognized that this town or this neighborhood was trying to be integrated, was black people were coming in. So what they did is coordinate with the local government and the private industry to scare all the white folks that were in their homes currently out of their neighborhoods. That means employing black women to walk down the streets with their baby carriages. That employs black men to drive past white homes with their music up loud. That employs black men and black women going house to house, asking how much you are you selling your home for when your home's not for sale, scaring the crap out of these white folks. That's stage one. Stage two, after they scared them, they got their houses for cheap, right? Because they were scared. They want to get out of the house. They want to get out of the house because they don't want to be integrated with black folks.
The niggas is coming.
Right? And after stage two, after they did that, then they got the houses for cheap. After they got the houses for cheap, they sold them to black people for not regular mortgages for the time from FHA. They sold them as contracts. These contracts were, for one, extremely high. For two, they weren't insured or federally backed at all. And for three, they had a thing called non-equity payments. So it was a loan that you had for 15 years and never ever paid on the equity. But the agreement was after 15 years that you would own your home. But if you missed a payment, another rule, then you can lose your house after missing one payment.
So you can own your home, but you would not have any equity in your fucking house, man.
Isn't that incredible?
Holy shit. And if you miss one payment in a 15-year period, you lose your house. So on the other hand, with an FHA loan, you actually have some type of insurance and protection against, if you lose your job or
disability or different things, different things that's covered what white people had, we never had.
Okay. Man. That's some diabolical shit, man. There's just no way around it, man.
It's not funny, but it's funny.
Man, them European motherfuckers, boy, y'all were, woof. Yeah, that's some diabolical shit, man. I mean, to pay some African Americans to walk through your neighborhood just to scare the European Americans, man. I mean, that you're going the extra mile.
Right. Now that led to, after they started that vicious cycle of giving these contracts, which was high rate, no equity paying mortgages, it was difficult for the black families to sustain their homes. So you had mothers and fathers both working two jobs. You had most black families renting out their rooms to their either their other family members or people that they didn't know. And this ripple effect of having to have multiple people living in your home to pay the bills caused an overblown excess number of people and kids in schools. So it overflowed schools. Instead of having 30 or 40 kids per room, you had 80 or 90 kids per room. We weren't good.
Wow.
Yeah, we were overflowing on the schooling. They were working double shifts. We weren't getting complete in our daily full days of school. It was straining all the resources of the stores in the area, the restaurants in the area. Everything was being strained. And also in these areas, of course, what I talked about earlier in the segment, there's no amenities. There's a lot of liquor stores, but there's no amenities.
A lot of gun shops.
But there's no amenities. There's no swimming pools. There's no tennis courts. There's very few basketball courts. If they are, they're not being upkept. There's very few amenities for kids to go to do positive things and use that positive energy. There's no robust after-school programs. I mean, it was just horrible, and that led to the drug gang situations that you've seen in the 90s. But it started all by this bad practice that I just stated, blockbusting.
Whew.
That's how our stall started, and it's continuing to go in that direction, but they're just not labeling it. They're doing it behind closed doors.
Wow. I mean, just the length that you're going through to create these situations where you hire African Americans to walk through neighborhoods, to knock on doors and ask if people are selling their homes, to create fear in the European Americans who live there. So they'll sell their house, drive the price down, and then sell it for way higher to an African American family.
with a bad contract that causes them to lose their home. See, the reason why the African Americans had people, random people staying with them, was to keep that home because they knew that if they lost that home, they wouldn't have anything left, right? So they did anything they could to keep that home, right? Where their white counterpart could get out of their loan because it was federally backed. It was insured by Prudential and these different insurance agencies to keep them afloat. But unfortunately, um, that system led to where we are today, and those practices are still being done today. I come up with a example that kind of explains it. Say you are a person that something that's happening actually today. Say you're a person that you're selling some Jordans online, right? And say there's a bunch of people that are putting bids out for those Jordans, and one says, um, "I'll give you 500 for the Jordans," and you're charging four. Like, yeah, I'll take that. And then another person says, "No."
Easy money.
Yeah, just another person says, "No, no, no, I'll give you 600 for that."
Oh, you
and,
win.
And you see the person online. You say, "Wait a minute. Oh man, you're black.
Oh, I see a nigger.
I'm going. I'm going to sell to the guy that the white guy that's give me 500." That's currently what's happening in the housing industry.
Yeah,
Okay.
I experienced that.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy, man. We were me and my ex-wife were looking for houses, and we overbid quite a bit on every single house. And we actually had the highest bid on about 2 to 3 houses, and we still didn't get the house. Now, one of those I think was because they wanted a cash payment, but the other two, we were the highest bid and we didn't get the house.
So you actually didn't select them.
Yeah. So I mean, man, that's just very telling, man. And it was crazy because they would ask us just stupid questions, like, I mean, what kind of job you got, man? What do you mean, fool? We qualify for the loan. What do you mean, what kind of job we got, man?
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
What the hell are you talking about?
We
man?
did. We went through all the background crap, all the different stuff, all the financial stuff, and we qualified. So you know what is else you need to know?
Yeah, man.
Our race.
The money is going to be there.
Exactly. So that's how the past relates to the present. I mean, have been studies and there have been examples. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have seen those examples of where somebody comes in and gets an appraisal for their home. And that appraisal is half of what they thought it was because they were thinking, well, I added on a bathroom, added on a room, and you're giving me an appraisal of 750 when it should be 1.4 million. And they're like, oh, well, we're sorry. That's what we're giving you. And then they change all the pictures in the house to white. And then they change the person that is playing who owns the house to a white person. And they give them a quote of 1.5 million, double the quote of the black person that they just
did. They're getting that Euro deal, that European American deal. That's pretty sad, man. I mean, there's really no way around that, man. Like, you're literally gonna take less bread to keep an African American from buying your house.
Exactly.
I mean, that doesn't sound very capitalistic to me.
That sounds very segregistic. Segregistic.
Man, yeah, it's something. Holy mackerel. Wow. Now, what about let's kind of go back to these segregations of these areas. And what was the percentage of these areas where the African Americans lived that were on landfills or next to landfills?
Next to pollution plants?
Yeah.
85%. So put that in your head. If there was a landfill and there was a a neighborhood built on top of that landfill, or built around that landfill, or built around the pollution plant, or using harmful materials, less quality materials in the house, in the apartment, was 90% black.
Wow. So I mean, you're living in a toxic area.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't grow shit
Yeah,
on that dirt because
that's correct.
it's on top of a freaking landfill.
It's line, yes, yes,
So I mean, you can't grow yourself food.
that's correct.
Um, I mean, you're just living in the worst circumstances possible. Like, and this is knowingly happening. Like, yes, we're gonna place you guys on a landfill next to a pollution plant. Yeah, good luck.
Right, right, right. Good luck with your kids,
Yeah,
getting stuff, like Parkinson's and any kind of other diseases that come from disorders that come from water pollution and food poisoning and lead pollution and all these different things that you don't know that your kids drinking every day, you know
oh yeah, bad water.
all that stuff, because of all the areas that we were put in. We were put in the worst areas with the worst building materials, and it was on purpose.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, this is crazy. So, um, do we want to talk about how the culture was not representing the policies? Now, what was that? It was what 19? Um, was it the 20s? Then 62, president came in.
Oh,
And then,
okay, and let me explain that to you. So I'm glad you brought that up. So, what was happening throughout the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and into the 60s, all the way up to the 80s, is that there were different Supreme Court rulings that stated in 1927 stated that the federal government could not um, interfere or create segregation. Okay, so they could not, their funds could not be used to create segregation, right?
was that Thurgood Marshall?
Yeah, and that was in 1947. But before that, in 1927, 1917, the Supreme Court kept ruling that, but they kept getting around that by changing the language, saying, "Well, it's not black people; it's poor people, or it's people distressed, it's violent people," or just changing the wording slightly, and doing the same exact thing. That's where we get this code wording from, where you see Democrats and Republicans argue about this coded wording and all that. That's where the coded wording comes from, because the people that were using the language had to adapt the language to continue to uh, use racism as a tool. They couldn't just call you in; they had to call you something else in order to satisfy the courts. To say, okay, well, they don't mean them; they mean them.
Yeah, thug.
Yeah, yeah, all these different things. So it's unfortunate, but during the only time that actually stopped is in 1962. President Kennedy actually put out an executive order. He got tired of all this the craziness and said, "We do not allow our federal funds to be used as tools of segregation." Period. And they continued that until 1981.
Oh shit! Damn it! Oh man! So that's like another 20 years.
That is 19 years. So,
oh man.
Then an appeals court in Washington D.C. finally struck it all down, and so they couldn't. And so what that did is it made all the deeds, all of the covenants, all of the zoning practices on every level illegal, and that finally started to take an effect in the 80s. But what happened is the individual private practices continued those practices up until now. This is why even now, when you got somebody that outbids somebody for a house, they still don't get the house. That's just like somebody outbidding somebody for some Jordans, and you don't get the Jordans because you're black.
Man, you're taking less bread to keep somebody from getting something. That's not capitalism, bro. You're supposed to go after the bread. You're supposed to go after the money. I'm not taking the deal and losing $100 on a sale just because somebody gets a sunburn. I'm not doing that, man. I'm like, here you go with these Jordans and get some sunscreen, right? So it's crazy.
Yes.
It's crazy, man.
Color of law.
Man, it's obviously we always want to just promote doing everything you can. You got to be accountable. You got to go to work. You got to get your bread. But these obstacles are here,
and they're real, and they're not imaginary. They're not fabricated. These are all facts. You look up everything that I told you, word for word, date for date, case for case. Read the color of law, and that will tell you everything you need to know on how the system kept us down.
Man, I mean, in the title, it just says it all: a forgotten history of how our government segregated America. Now, who did this dude work for? Richard Rothstein. Wasn't he? Didn't he work for somebody like Bill Clinton or something like that?
No. That's Richard Wright. That's
Okay.
Robert Wright. He was a famous economist, but same kind of angle aspect of thought. But yeah, no. I mean, it was so bad that the Commission of Civil Rights did a study in 1973 and found that the federal government, in collusion with state governments and private industry, was responsible for the vilification and the segregation of families since 1900.
Damn. It's 2000.
That's
Wow.
crazy. That's crazy.
So, I mean, that sounds like a bunch of bullshit that African Americans are dealing with.
Well, in every example that we're giving, first it was with the casteism a couple episodes ago, and how racism is being used to um, um, uh, police the caste and define it. Honestly, it's really crazy that I just got a brain fart, but it's really it's really crazy how all of this is based off of the ebb and flows of policy. What happens is somebody implements a policy. We fight against that policy. We get that policy changed. Then they fight against that policy and get that policy changed back. At the end of the book, he describes how the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment should have prevented for all these things from happening.
Damn.
All these things from happening. And so what that does is it creates a vacuum. And the vacuum is like this. If you have a person, I'm going to give you an example. If you have a person that went to prison for 20 years unlawfully, he gets out and he wasn't supposed to be in prison in the first place. He sues the government and they give him bread. They give him $1 million or $2 million or $5 million or $10 million, right? Same thing that happens if he dies. His money gets his family gets that bread, right? So it begs to differ. If studies after study after study confirms that we had these issues and that our ancestors and our mothers, fathers suffered from all these policies, then either they should get something now or we should get something now because we suffered also. So reparations is a real situation that we need to talk about.
It's a real conversation, but it's crazy. I actually see politicians bringing it up now, even the European politicians, just because I think it's so glaring that you can't get around it, and a lot of people wanted to stay away from it. But I mean, when you look at the history of reparations, a lot of cultures have gotten reparations.
Yes.
The Japanese got reparations for being in internment camps here. Native Americans got a level of reparations. Hebrews got a level of reparations for Nazi Germany.
Yes.
And the list goes on and on and
On
on.
and on.
So, what is going on with the most oppressed group on the of this planet?
Getting reparations, because as we talk about this, we go into the weeds and the details of this. You're noticing a pattern that we're getting discriminated against on all fronts. Government, housing. We're going over that now. Okay, we're going over housing right now, but eventually we'll hit every facet of how we're being discriminated against, and so it leaves nothing unturned, no stone unturned on what we're going through. I mean, from going to the store to buying a car to buying a house, we're being discriminated against at every turn. To having a job, I mean, at every turn. And I'm up read books and come to you guys with the summary of all these books every time that I open a new door, and it lets you know something. It tells you something. It says, "Wow, we thought we needed reparations for slavery. No, we need reparations for current activities and
Man,
slavery
man.
and all the segregation and all the racism that you've caused us, and pain caused us throughout all these decades, and all of our mothers and grandfathers and grandmothers dealt with in the past. I mean, generation after generation after generation of discrimination, discriminatory practices that cost us lives, sickness, destruction, death.
Oof.
I mean, and then also what's really bad is what's the word, slander. I mean, you paint a picture of black people like we're stupid, we're violent, we're lazy, we're all these different things, and we're not. You're casting a whole group of people a certain way, and that's not accurate. So that's also a deprivation lawsuit for everybody that's black.
Man, class action lawsuit. Like the shirt said, man, nigga, you almost made me spill my yak. man, man, like what are we really talking about here? So, it's and this is probably why they're starting to ban all these books.
Yes, good point, bro. Man, I've learned so much from the books that I read, and there's so much more than I've ever imagined. That now that I know, I see why they try to ban books. People take back and forth quotes from different societies. Germany took quotes and cues from us, and now we're taking quotes and cues from them.
Man, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone read Fahrenheit 451 in high school. Okay. Mm-hmm. Same shit, man. They're trying to burn the books so motherfuckers can't learn and be like, oh, damn, this is what happened? We need to rebel against this.
Right, before it happens again.
Yeah, right. So, and that would be a point as to how it's relevant today. right? So, yeah, man, like this is some bullshit. Right. Now, granted, they're going to say, oh, well, you should just work hard. You're right. Everyone should work hard. But you shouldn't try to fuck me, man. We're going to keep bringing this up. I'm going to work hard, but you should not be trying to fuck me.
Exactly. Yes.
All of this just because I don't have to wear sunscreen.
Yeah. And that's the truth. One more time. That's the truth.
Yeah. That's fucked up, man. So, I mean, this, it's interesting because as we research this, it's a very complex onion, man, that we're peeling back here. Because, you come in there, excuse me, my allergies are killing me. But we always have these conversations, and it's like you discover more and more and more.
Right.
And it's never just simple. And it's just everything starts off extremely brutal, extremely violent, and then it just keeps adapting and adapting and adapting to where it's not violent, but it's behind the scenes, and it's changing language, and it's ignoring policies, and
done behind closed doors.
Man,
It really lets you understand something, that racism is more powerful than anything, than money, than anything.
Yeah, because cats are losing money to be racist.
One more time.
Cats are losing bread. I mean, we live in America, man. This is about the bread, and you're losing the bread to fuck over this motherfucker because he don't need sunscreen.
And it's just that simple. Once you understand that, then you can honestly see the world from a correct lens. Okay? Once you understand that racism is more important to these people, being ahead of you, discriminating against you, keeping you down is more important to them than money, than their own lives in certain situations. And I have a lot of examples of that. People actually voting against their own interests many times over.
Oh man,
and killing themselves and killing their families.
It's looking like that book over there.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, this is probably going to be another.
Yeah, it's going to be
another episode here.
It is.
But
dying of whiteness.
Man, and we ain't talking about lack of sunscreen. Yeah, we ain't talking about that.
We're talking about voting against your own interests. Wait until we get deep into that one. I can't wait.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Damn. So are we about to segue into?
Yes, man. Oh man, here we go. Here it comes.
Okay, so we're going to start talking about religion, and
he's going to start talking about religion.
Yeah.
I'll chime in a little bit here and there.
Yeah, but so first I want to break down, a somewhat rough timeline of religions and spiritual systems. Okay, so the oldest known monotheistic religion with a savior and a resurrection are the Twa Pygmies, 40,000 years ago. Okay, I'm going to say that again. The oldest monotheistic religion where there's a resurrection and a savior is the Twa Pygmies 40,000 years ago.
40,000 years ago.
All right. Obviously, that's a lot longer than white baby Jesus. Okay. So I'm not trying to convert anybody. Right. I'm just telling facts.
Right.
And you can feel however you want to.
Right.
All right. So now, for most Aboriginal cultures, everything is really based upon nature. Whether it's Native Americans, whether it's Aborigines in Australia, all right, or if it's even Chinese or Japanese, it's all usually based off of nature somehow, right? So the Aboriginal rainbow serpent, okay, that's their thing in Australia.
Right.
That's 8,000 BC.
Right.
Okay, that's a long ass time ago.
Long time ago.
All right, and there's actually a book that I need to get into because their culture is really, really old. And then you have Kemet.
Right.
So Kemet is not the oldest society or civilization, but it's the most advanced and oldest.
Okay.
All right. So it's the oldest advanced civilization that we know of. And that started around 7,000 BC. All right. That's a long ass fucking time ago. Then you have like Hinduism. Now there's a lot of, when I was researching Hinduism, there's a lot of different sources. All right. And it went from everywhere from 5,000 to 2,500 BC. Okay. So that's a big range there. All right. Then you have, and I'm kind of jumping around the timeline here, right? You have Buddhism. Okay, that's 500 BC, right? And now I gotta switch over here to where was I?
Now this all is gonna be make sense in a little bit here. He's making a point. So
okay, so then I kind of want to get through all of the non-Abrahamic religions first. Okay, when I say Abrahamic religions, that's Judaism or Hebrew, Christianity, and Islam. All right. So you have in Japan, it was the Shinto, 300 BC, right? And then obviously, I'm missing out on like Native Americans throughout the Americas. And I don't have an exact timeline on that. But most of these timelines are ranging anywhere from, 5 to 8,000 BC. And the natives were here for quite some time. And I would imagine it would be somewhere around the same time period as the Aboriginals of Australia. So that's 8,000 BC. You have their rainbow serpent. So, and I actually have hold on here. So as far as the Native Americans, everything has a spirit, and everything is connected. It's all about nature. Okay. Now, obviously, each tribe has their specific creation story. All right. And they're usually all different, but actually similar. Okay. So now we are going to get into the Abrahamic religions, and this is where everyone is going to be in their feelings.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So again, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm just telling you the facts, and you can do whatever the fuck you want to do with it. All right. So the first Abrahamic religion is Judaism, or the Hebrew faith, or what we today call Jews. Okay. Now, early Hebrews are considered to be around 2010 BC. All right. So to put that in context, Kemet was around for 5,000 years.
Damn. 5,000 years.
So, and excuse me, when I say Kemet, that is what we call Egypt today. All right. Egypt is a Greek word. All right. So they were around for 5,000 years before Judaism came to light.
Man.
Why is this important? Well, Moses grew up and went to school in Kemet.
Correct.
In fact, there's a book that is actually linking him and is saying that he is Amenhotep IV, which was a pharaoh of Egypt. I haven't looked into this book yet, but the homie Ant Brown, what's up, Ant Brown? He shot that to me. So I don't know the relevancy of that, but the time period matches because that is the pharaoh who actually started monotheism in Kemet around 2500 BC, which is a few centuries before Judaism actually started. Okay. So obviously we all know the story about the Hebrews leaving Kemet, what we call present day Egypt, and starting their own thing, right? They had the pilgrimage with where the sea split and the Pharaoh chased them and the plagues and all that stuff, right? So obviously that stuff happened. Now, at the time, Kemet was ruled and populated by nothing but Black African people. This is before the Hyksos or Asiatic came in and conquered them. Okay, it's before that. Everyone there is Black. Okay, there is no mistaking this.
Right.
All right, everyone wants to talk about people saying it's anti-Semitic. Well, everyone there was Black. Everyone spoke Aramaic and Hebrew and whatever the Kemetic language is. Everyone spoke the same languages. Everyone was looking the same. There's no difference here. Okay. So when Moses said, "Let my people go," those were niggas. All right. Now you can feel however you want to feel about that. All right. I'm not here to convert anybody. I'm just spitting facts, and then you can do with them what you please. All right. So obviously, the Judaism religion really started kicking with Abraham. All right. So Abraham is around 2000 BCE. All right. So again, that's 5,000 years of Kemet being an advanced civilization. All right. So what else is happening in that time period? So you have the Great Pyramids that are built by Imhotep. All right. So Imhotep is the bad guy in the Mummy. And nah, he doesn't look like some smooth Persian dude. He was black. Okay. Kemet is a translation for land of the black faces. And Imhotep is the first known genius in written history. So what does it mean? Well, he was diagnosing cancer 4,000 years ago. He was doing surgeries. He was an architect for the Great Pyramid. All right. And he was like the right-hand man to the pharaoh. I think it was Dozer. You know, you can obviously Google that and look it up yourself. And to make it even a further point, the Greeks actually worshipped him as a god. All right. So that all that stuff was happening at this time.
Right.
And this is when Abraham first goes to Canaan, right, and does his thing, and then everything, you know, kind of maturates from there. Now, supposedly the Israelites became slaves in 1700 BCE. All right, Kemet was still an African country then. Now, the Hebrews are the first Abrahamic religion. All right. Now, obviously, you know, Moses went to school in Kemet. And essentially, I mean, there's no really way to beat around the bush around this, okay? You can take the Book of the Dead, the 100 Laws of Ma'at, and you can look at the Torah, and it looked like somebody cheated off of somebody else's test. Okay? So you can take that however you want to take that. Again, I'm not converting anybody, but I'm just spitting facts. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to say our saying. Masculinity is divine and godly. So, okay. So now we have to get to not white baby Jesus. All right. Let me say it again. We have to get to not white baby Jesus. So again, it's kind of the same story. So I didn't really think, you know, this Jesus dude was real. I got to be honest, you know, because there's no like sarcophaguses or anything like that. But I found multiple sources with the person who would be what most we refer to as the white baby Jesus, not white baby Jesus, right? So now, granted, the letter J was not created at this time period, so there was no Jesus. All right, it's like Yahshua, right? So there's a few sources where it's Yahshua ben Pandira. All right, that was the name of this person before the Greeks changed it to Isos Christos, which translates to like Prince of Power. So the historical Christ. Okay, so now, so this guy lived. I want to say it says it lived a century earlier in the 4th year of the reign of Alexander Janus, king of Judea. So that was around 106 to 76 BC. All right. Now, actually, let me go to. It's a little shorter. This other one. Yeah, John Henry Clark gives a much shorter version of this. So let's keep going here.
How y'all doing tonight? You guys doing good tonight?
I mean, I hope so, right? Okay. So, Joshua ben Pandora, or Jesus, was a native African who was educated in the Egyptian Kemet mystery schools according to the mystery system. And I said earlier, Moses, who we believe to be possibly Amenhotep IV, was also educated in the same schools and in the same manner.
Mm.
Research also concludes that the concept of Christianity is very similar, if not copied, from the Egyptian mystery system.
Mm.
According to the late A. Powell Davies, originally it was the earth itself that was the goddess, virginal again. With every spring, her son was the fruit of the earth, born only to die, and in dying, to be implanted once more in the earth. As the seed that would renew the cycle, this was the vegetation myth from which the Savior God and the Mater Dolorosa was drawn, soon to be elaborated. The cycle of the seasons on earth was viewed to be parallel with the coordinate cycle of the heavens. The concept of the virgin goddess grew out of the constellation Virgo. That's me. Virgo rose in the eastern sky just when Sirius, the star from the east, was signaling the new birth of the sun. The passage of the horizon line through Virgo was a conception of the Virgin from the sun. The earth myth was thus blended with the sky myth, and both with the memory of ancient heroes, real or legendary. And so came the saga of the Redeemer. The cave, later to be associated with the birth of Jesus, was earlier the birthplace of Heru, who the Greeks called Horus, who, when he was grown, would become Osiris. Okay, and that's who the in ancient Kemet he was referred to as Asar, who must die for the salvation of his people. Isis, who is actually, that's who the Greeks called her, Isis. In Kemet, she was called Aset, was the Mater Dolorosa. This ancient myth of the Africans was altered and officially was changed first by the Greeks and later by the Romans, who adopted the religion of the Africans and later changed it. This can be best described by what happened at the Nicene Council in 325 AD, which is now in northwest Turkey. Excuse me.
You have water?
Yeah, I'm good. The Nicene Council was held in 325 AD by Emperor Constantine to settle a dispute by the Arian views of the Trinity. Now, where did we hear this word Arian before? Oh, that's right. Hitler.
Yeah. And apartheid.
Yeah. Hold on. I got to go to sugar. Shit's getting deep. Arius was a priest of Alexandria who believed that Christ is not of the same essence as God, but of similar substance. The council adopted the so-called Nicene Creed. I'm probably fucking up the pronunciation here.
That doesn't really matter.
Which declared that God and Christ as God are of one substance. The council also fixed the time of observing Easter, with the question of whether the Christian Easter would be on the same day as the Jewish Passover or on Sunday. Well, I think we know what happened there. The Nicene Council is where African spirituality was altered to become an Aryan religion and later used to foster slavery and racism throughout the world. Okay, now, again, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm just reading history here. So, I mean, there's really no way to beat around the bush here. All right, now, we can go right back to the Pygmies, who kind of first had that savior and resurrection story 40,000 years ago. And that's probably where it migrated to Kemet. Granted, it took 33,000 years, but it eventually got there. Now, you know, I mean, there's really no nice way to say it. You know, all these similarities, okay? You have a virgin birth story, all right? That started with Hebrew, with Osset and Osar, and somehow Osset got pregnant, even though Osar was dead, had Hebrew, and then you have the whole rising sun and savior and resurrection story. All right. Now, then it pops up again in actually quite a few other cultures, not just Hebrew, but also like I think Krishna is pretty similar. And what's the Mesopotamia? Yeah, that ancient civilization as well. Now, I don't know about you, but I ain't seen too many chicks popping up, you know, with babies, and ain't nobody jumped in that coochie.
Here you go.
I'm just gonna point that out. Ain't no one randomly getting pregnant out without no hip action going down. So the difference here is that in Kemet, they did not believe that to be a real story. The etymology got mutated when it got converted from an African spiritual system to a European or Western world religion. So, you know, all these similarities here, you know, the December 25th, you know, the resurrection in the cave, the virgin birth story. All right. Like, there's no getting around it. Like, this story started with the Pygmies and passed down probably to other cultures predating Kemet. And then Kemet also took that story, and throughout time, this story is prevalent throughout many different cultures. So now, once you hit the 325 AD, that's when you start seeing white baby Jesus. Okay, that's where the idea of white baby Jesus starts coming up, even though in the Vatican right now they have black Madonnas. Okay, like right now. Even I think in Russia they have black Madonnas. All right, so you know the facts are already there. It's just, you know, you really just have to open your eyes and look for it, man. And then, you know, you have a decision to make whether you're going to be willfully ignorant or not.
That's important. That's a very important point. Willful ignorance. That's what we're trying to distinguish here.
So let's go back to episode 1. And we talked about how the caste system in America was working because the Africans and the natives would not originally convert to Christianity. Okay, I'm going to say that again. The caste system in America in the 1600s,
which was reinforced by religion,
was working because the Native Americans and the Africans were not converting to Christianity.
Then once they started converting to Christianity, then they said, well, these niggers, we have to,
man,
we're going to have to start saying you're dark and you're ugly.
Something.
And, that way, you can't get the same thing as we get because you're dark and ugly.
Yeah. So then the Africans and the Native Americans started converting to Christianity. So that caste system no longer started working, which was the birth of racism and color. Okay. So, but I actually believe it started in 325 AD. That's when I think, the Western world and the Europeans were like, this is how we're going to take shit over. And we're going to use this system here. All right. Because it's easy to revolt against an emperor. It's a lot harder to revolt against somebody who's omniscient, omnipotent, and you can't actually touch them. But that's my theory. Okay, I can't say that's a fact. But, just by saying, man, this pollen is kicking my ass, that the Native Americans and the Africans were not converting to Christianity when they first got here. I mean, that should be a very telling statement right there. All right. That's where you originally come from. And, now let's even dial it back a bit here. Christianity was actually an African religion.
One more time. Wow.
Christianity actually started as an African religion, just like Judaism. All right. The first and oldest Bible, guess where that is? You know where that is, E?
Ding, 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 ding. Ethiopia.
You see anybody getting a sunburn in Ethiopia? Nope. The oldest Christian Bible is in Ethiopia. The oldest Christian structures are in Ethiopia. I'm just going to let you marinate on that one for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So, so 325 AD, the Nicene Council, that's where a lot of stuff changed over. Okay. And now we can kind of go to Islam. All right. So 570 AD, Muhammad was born. 610 AD, Muhammad has his first revelation, okay, or dream, or whatever you want to call it. And he essentially had a conversation, or God spoke to him. Okay. Now, I'm not a follower of the Islam or Muslim religion. So if I'm making any errors or mistakes here, please feel free to comment, like, share, hate, and all that. So 622 AD is when he took his first pilgrimage from Mecca to Medina, I believe. And again, if I messed that up, please correct me. Now, not too long after that, they started conquering and fighting pretty immediately. Then obviously, you kind of have the Crusades, which started in 1040 AD or something. And so the reason why I want to bring that up is, you have the cross and the ankh. All right. So I made a post on Facebook in regards to what the ankh symbolizes. Well, the ankh symbolizes the feminine on the top with the ovaries. And the reason why the woman was held in such high regard is because they were the bridge for the spirits to get to the real world, which is what we're in now, right? And then the bottom of that was the masculine energy. So you have the masculine and feminine energy. Now, when you have the Christian cross, okay, it's double masculine, which means death and war. Now, I'm not going to go over all the dates and stuff of the Crusades and all that stuff, but, history shows us that there's a lot of war and death that follows the Christian religion. Okay, you have the Crusades, which was against the Islam and the Muslims. I mean, mostly from Turkey or whatever, wherever they had conquered. That's a lot of war. You have the Christian slave trade. I'm gonna say that again. You have the Christian slave trade. Okay. Again, remember, they were using the caste system over here in America because the Africans and natives were not converting to Christianity at first. And when I say caste system, that's how they are segregating them from the Christians. Okay. So, I mean, again, I'm not going to, say that the cross isn't a holy symbol and it's not going to work against vampires. But, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. There's a lot of death that's following this religion. And Christianity was used to justify it. So, and Islam ain't too far off either.
Right.
Right. Now, let's kind of get back to the caste system here, man. And so how does the caste system really relate to us today? Well, I think it's pretty simple. You have Hebrews and Christians on top of the caste. That would be Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So most Hebrews are Jews today are European.
Yes.
Okay. I can't say as are Christians. There's a lot of different colors of Christians and stuff like that. And there are different colors of Hebrews. Right. But the top of our caste is European Americans.
Yes.
All right. Then you have, so how does that go, E?
Evangelicals with the European Americans. Then it goes.
With the Asians.
Oh, even the caste system.
Caste by culture.
Yeah. Then the Asians. Then the Hispanics. And then the Africans.
Now,
Hispanics and Indians are the same. Natives are on the same level.
So now you have, your Christians and your Hebrews on the top of the caste. You got your Catholics. And then you have your Muslims on the bottom of the religious caste.
Yes.
Again, you can agree or disagree, but I mean, it's 1 + 1 = 2, brother. So
yeah, if all the people that were January 6th were Muslims, they all be dead right now.
super dead.
Extra and celebrated.
Man,
Like, oh yeah, we killed all of them.
man, eviscerated them. So, what does all this mean? Well, I mean, all these systems are intertwined. You know, you have an outline of now. Like we said in episode 1, there's caste systems in every culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whether it's in Kemet or the Pygmies or the Aboriginals, there's always a caste system. Because if you have a chief, he's the top of the caste. If you have a pharaoh, he's the top of the caste. You have a president, he's the top of the caste. Right? So
you whether you use racism, which is culture and the way a person looks, or whether you use religion, whether you use a monarchy where it's a king, a queen, and you use blood, it's all a caste system.
and it's just a way to maintain control and order. And like it or not, religion is used as a tool to do that.
Yes.
Just like racism.
Yes.
So now what does this mean? Well, I mean, it's just like what I said, again, I'm not trying to convert anybody, but feel free to investigate this yourself. There's plenty of books and authors, John Henry Clark and many others. And you can look into this yourself, on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way around it. There's no nice way to say it. And, especially because of how embedded those religious systems are, not just here in our country, but throughout the world. And, Christianity and Islam is very well embedded in Africa.
Yeah.
Ferociously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where all these spiritual systems started from.
Right.
So, it's really just fucked up, man.
It is. I mean, it left Africa, morphed, and came back to colonize Africa after they created it, and it meant something completely different to them. That's unfortunate.
And it was used to justify millions of deaths.
Millions.
So what do we mean by that? Okay, well, we can use Nazi Germany as an example. Okay. He killed 6 million European Hebrews. That's a lot of people, man.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. King Leopold of Belgium killed 15 to 20 million Congolese. I'm going to say that again. King Leopold of Belgium killed 15 to 20 million Congolese. I want to say 20 years before Nazi Germany. Now that's just one colonizer. Every European country cut Africa up.
In segments.
France, Belgium, Italy, England, they all cut Africa up. And the shit that King Leopold did, everybody else was doing.
Right. We just don't have records that shows all the statistics, but similar.
It's all the same shit. Massive atrocities, massive rape. Okay. I was just talking to E earlier today, and I don't know if it was Mandela or Stephen Biko. Those were activists in Africa. And, they were using huge metal rods with condoms on the tips of them. I don't really think I need to
go any further.
Yeah. Right? So that's what was happening, man. And religion was a justification of that.
Same thing they did here in the States. I mean, They use the
Yeah,
King James version of the Bible.
you
Really?
know, I mean, so I mean, it's all these things to think about, right? Like, how are we gonna, so King James talked to God. He was like, "Hey, man, we need to remix this."
So we can keep these slaves. Man, that's not funny, but
Right? The oldest Bible is in Ethiopia. So you would think you would just translate that and roll with that one.
right? Nah. We need to have slaves. They're our main source of income. They're the biggest part of our economy. So we need to make this right.
So, the fact that you're continuous. Now I don't know if they remixed the Quran.
Right.
I don't know of any remixes of the Quran.
Yeah, I have no idea about that.
Now I know they have divisions like the Shiite and again, I'm not hip, but they have different divisions in Islam,
Right.
who are kind of beefing with each other. But when you're remixing the holy book, I gotta okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, right. To suit your own culture's needs for the time.
And an English monarch is putting his name on it.
Uh-oh. Enough said.
So again, I'm not trying to convert anybody, but yeah, man, just look into it for yourself. And that's what I'm always going to tell anybody. But and this is not an easy conversation. But because when I brought it up, he didn't want to do it. He was like, "Oh man,"
It's like, oh man, I was like,
but
but the truth hurts, man. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it feels good.
So I mean, and to think that us as Black people, we are the most loyal Christians, and that religion has done nothing but destroy us, rape us, pillage us, steal from us. So it's just a bad deal. But it was we're all about truth on this podcast, and we had to have this conversation because it's necessary, right?
Yes.
Like it was used to justify killing millions of Native Americans.
Yes.
On our continent, on the South American continent, the Caribbean, okay, Jamaica. The buck breaking that was happening in Jamaica is the reason why the Black community, especially in Jamaica, have the view that they have on homosexuality. So it's a nasty. You can understand why you'd want to burn the book, because this doesn't make you look good at all. Like there's no hero here. It's just oppressor and the oppressed.
That's it.
So, man, I think that might be it.
That's it, bro, man. We've covered a lot of ground today. How long have we been on here now?
Man, it's an hour and 24 minutes, man.
Oof. Good show today, man.
Yeah. So, to recap, we talked about racism and how it affects the housing market, how policies were put in place, but it didn't change the culture. Even after presidential orders, it took another 20 years to give the policy some teeth, and those teeth still weren't working.
It's still not working to this very day.
And then obviously we broke down religions, right? The Twa Pygmies had a savior and resurrection 40,000 years ago.
Mm.
So, and then obviously all the other spiritual systems all across the world were all very similar.
Yeah.
Okay, it was all about nature and the elements, and being one with their environment, right? And then you have Kemet, 7,000 BC, 7,000 BC to about 1,500 BC.
Damn.
Right? Now, please fact check me on that, because I know they got conquered by the Asiatic Hyksos or some shit like that. And then obviously you have the Greeks and the Romans who conquered Kemet, which then they renamed it Egypt. But that's thousands of years. I mean, this country's been around for what, 400 or 500 years, maybe?
Yeah. 1776.
Yeah, Kemet had a good 3,000 to 4,000, 5,000 year run. 5,000. The first advanced civilization. Not the first civilization, but the first advanced civilization. So, I mean, that information's out there, you know. So yeah, it's been a great talk. So hopefully, you know, it'll spark some minds. You'll go and try to challenge what I said. You know,
Challenge what I said also.
you know,
Read the books. Look up the literature.
yeah, and you know, we always want to bounce stuff off each other. So if you feel that you need to get something off your chest, please comment. You know, like, share, hate, doesn't matter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. But I think that's it, man. I'm getting kind of hungry.
Yeah, there it is. It's time for that second meal.
Man, don't spill my yak, nigga.
Yeah. Man, that was a hard show, man. That was, oof. When you was talking about all those deaths and those killings, I was like, oh my God, man. Them motherfuckers was gonna, I'm surprised motherfuckers gonna start, you know, they're, you know, shit.
Man, I keep thinking I gotta work tomorrow. God bless America, man.
Damn, look at all that. Man. Ah.